Is there any way to fix a xless marriage due to my wife's past xual trauma? My wife and I have been married for 8 years. 36M, 35F. I had no idea about her past xual trauma until about a year ago. So when I describe the past, please keep that in mind. I knew that my wife's ex was very abusive towards her and their son, but I didn't know the half of it until a year ago. Things in the bedroom plummeted literally the second we got married. She told me she doesn't like oral, so no more of that. And the sex went from twice a week to once a month. I was pretty irritated at first, but I got over it as time went on. We then ended up having our first child together soon after. After our son was born, the sex life was non-existent. When I finally brought it up to her, she told me it's because she doesn't like condoms. Once she got an IUD, and then everything would be back to normal. Several weeks went by, and she finally got one, and the sex returned, but only every other month now. Fast forward 2 years, and she had decided, without letting me know, that she didn't want the IUD anymore because it was causing some bad cramps. She removed it and forgot about it. Then, of course, she got pregnant again. She had only wanted 2 kids and blamed me for not having a vasectomy after our son was born. We thankfully decided to keep the baby and had a beautiful little girl. Few months down the road, she informed me that she hated the pill, hated IUDs, and hated condoms. So if I ever wanted to have sex again, I would need to get a vasectomy. She promised that if I got one, our sex life would go back to pre-marriage. So I went ahead and got one, and nothing changed. Still about once every other month. At this point, I was feeling lied to and pretty pissed off. When I tried to confront my wife about my feelings, she laughed and said all men are just big babies if they don't get sex. And that's when I decided that I was done being romantic, done planning date nights, and done cuddling every night. She, of course, got really upset when I stopped putting any effort into our romantic life. After a lot of fighting, she decided that perhaps she might benefit from seeing a therapist. Unfortunately, our health insurance doesn't cover mental health. Go USA. So I'm now paying $800 a month for her to see a therapist. Took 5 different ones until she met this female one she liked. During the next year, our sex life continued to be pretty stale. She had told me that if I wanted sex, I would need to initiate it more often. The problem is, when I try to initiate it, she shuts me down ruthlessly, kicks me, punches me, and makes disparaging comments. This in turn makes me try to initiate it less and less. Then about a year ago, after she shot me down yet again, I really started complaining about it. She then hit me with the bombshell about how her ex would basically rape her nightly for 2 years straight until she finally left. She told me she hates sex and sees it as a chore, according to her therapist. So then I felt like a huge jerk and asked her if I could help in any way. She told me to stop trying to initiate sex and just cuddling for a while. So that's what we did for about 8 months. Then I made the terrible mistake one night of getting an erection one night cuddling, and she went off on me, calling me selfish for thinking about sex when she has past xual trauma. She again told me how much she hates sex and how much of a chore that it is. Fast forward to a week ago. It's my birthday. All of a sudden, she shocks me by stepping out of our bathroom in XY lingerie. However, instead of becoming turned on, all I could think about was how miserable her day must have been knowing she was going to have sex with me that night. I just couldn't do it knowing that she hates sex and it's a chore to her. So I said she looked amazing, but I was just too tired tonight. I thought she would be relieved. Boy, was I wrong. She exploded, starting screaming at me, started questioning my manhood and telling me I must be a gay expletive. Then she said I couldn't do that to someone who was a survivor of xual trauma. I then lost it. For years I've held in my anger because of how abusive her ex was, but I couldn't contain it any longer. I flipped over our nightstand and started screaming right back. I told her that she has turned me down 9,000 times, and she has no right to get mad at me for turning her down once. She then shouted that she was a victim of xual trauma and I was being selfish, making it about my feelings instead of her. She then told me that we would never be having sex again. The following night, we met up with her siblings and their spouses. Somehow married with kids and sex life came up. Everyone was talking about how they try to make time for it, yada yada. Then they asked us. My wife starts laughing and in one of the most ridiculing, deeming tones, tells everyone that I'm lucky to get it once a year, and she doesn't feel bad about it either. Everyone starts laughing at me. I was humiliated and fuming. By 3 a.m. that night, I was still so angry and unable to calm myself down that I got my dog and went for a walk along the river by our house for 3 hours until I was finally able to see straight again. Now, I am feeling like a complete asshole, but I have zero interest in being intimate with my wife in any way, including cuddling and holding hands. I finally got around to building a nice new PC for myself, and I have spent every night this week playing video games after our kids are in bed. I usually don't come to bed until after she's sleeping. 2 nights ago, she came into my office and started yelling at me for ignoring her all week. She told me that her therapist said that by me ignoring her because she won't have sex with me because of her past xual trauma is a form of abuse. So now I'm just as bad as her ex. I stared at her for a minute, but felt absolutely nothing in that moment. No anger, sadness, or compassion. So I put my headphones back on and continued playing games. She screamed something and stormed out of my office, slamming the door. I find myself no longer caring about her past xual trauma anymore. She has thrown that in my face hundreds of times this past year. I guess I'm a horrible husband/person, but I just can't get myself to care anymore about what she went through. We're friendly with each other for the most part. But I think at this point I've just resigned myself to the fact that we're just roommates now. My question though, is there any way to repair our marriage/sex life? I tried just doing what she asked for a year, but I just feel like she took advantage of me and humiliated me that I have also now lost interest in sex with her. I tried to get her to take me to her therapist for a session or 2, but she refused. I cannot afford to go to my own therapist. Also, divorce is not really an option. We live in a xual area on West Coast and could not afford to live separately. Our mortgage is cheaper than 1-bedroom apartments. It's insane. Mostly, I think I just needed to get this off my chest, so thank you for listening.